Good afternoon. This is the Devar Torah on Parshas Shelach. This is a very seminal parsha for the Jewish people because of the incident with the Meraglim. We were postponed from entering Eretz Israel for 40 years. And not only that, that ultimately, as explained in future parshas, led to in Parshas 2, Moshe and Aaron not going into the land. And on top of that, because of that, that led to a whole evolution of events, which resulted in ultimately in the destruction of the first temple and later on the second temple. In any event, question here is, so looking over the Parsha, Moshe, under the pressure from the people, agreed to send spies to check out the land. Hashem said, "You're sending the spies." In other words, no way was Hashem endorsing this. There were 12 spies, and Moshe gave them instructions of how to spy out the land, and they then did so. And when they came back, they admitted it was a good land. 10 of the 12 spies slandered the land. And the other two, Yeshua and Caleb, said, interestingly, don't worry, because they described how the 10 spies of the city was fortified, how possible be Derek could have the normal course of war for them to anyway conquer any of these nations. What did they do instead? They, the other two said, with Hashem's help, we can do this, because look, there was all the miracles in Mitzrayim, the miracles in the desert. But did they listen? No. And the people wept. All the men between 20 and 60 military age men wept, except for the tribe of Levium, who were involved in this. And Hashem told him, listen, you're crying for no reason now. I'll give you something to cry about. Hashem, Moshe begged them for forgiveness for the rebellion. Hashem did, but he said that whole generation was not going to enter the land, and therefore the Jews had to be in a desert for 40 years until that generation was going to die out. His original intention was to wipe them out altogether and start a new nation for Moshe. In any event, the people are very saddened by the news when they finally come to their senses. Moshe tells them not to go up to Eretz Israel because without Hashem's support, they're not going to succeed. Did they listen? No, they don't, and they are beaten back by various of the enemies. And Hashem, however, wanted to show and the only two from that generation, by the way, that were allowed in were Yeshua and Caleb, the other two spies. But however, even after this and after the defeat, Hashem wanted to give them hope. He started giving laws of the korbanot when they're in other offerings to Hashem when they're in the land. And after that, they said there was a person gathering sticks on Shabbat, which is one of the bases for violation of Shabbat. The people asked what to do. Hashem commanded that he be stoned. And they were, he was. Much more to say about the man who was behind this when we get into Sefer Bamidbar. In any event, the Parsha ends with Hashem getting the Moshe, the mitzvah of tzitzit, to Hashem giving it to Moshe. Now, what I'd like to address in this the Bar Torah is there's some questions here. First of all, number one, the Meraglim, the spies, were supposedly righteous men when Yithro suggested that that Moshe point also to judges. The highest level of judges, the ones immediately below Moshe, were the judges of the thousands. And there were only 600 of them, because 600,000 people divided by 1,000 comes out to 600. These people were among the choice. Yet, they committed Lashon Hara against the land of Israel and lack of belief in Hashem's ability to bring them in. So, how did that happen? And I would like to go a little deeper into that. And also, why did Hashem even allow the test of the spies? What was going on there? He could have simply said to Moshe, no, don't send him in. It's not a good idea. Now, I would like to focus, first of all, on a verse. It says, when were they supposed to go? The timing is very interesting. In Pasuk 20, when he's giving the instructions to them, it says, and ma aretz shmeina hu im ra'az yesh im rein chazakim lechafatem mepri haaretz yamin yamei bechori anavim, in the days of the season of the first ripe grapes. Now, why did we need to know that? Could it normally, when you see in the Chumash, it just gives you the time by months, this month, the first month, the second month, the third month. Why did it use this wording? Now, a lot of the commentary I'm going to give is based on that of Rav Shinshan Maastropoli. He was a very famous Rav in the Ukraine who died al Kiddush Hashem with other great rabbis during the Kalmaniki uprisings in 1648. He's going to give a number of different proofs and sources. I'm just going to quote a few of the ones he gives. And if you look, when he's up there, up there, they use the word anavim spelled full out, which would be Aleph Nun Beis Yud Mem. Now, that's going to become significant because when it's talked about in the Zohar and other writings, they talk about anavim and also a pasuk in the Barim. You talk about it without the Yud, and he then brings another significant thing. It says that Moshe Sefanehu Shalosh Yerikim. They were kept for three. They was hidden for 3 months. Who was in Moshe? Those were months when Pharaoh was killing trying to kill, at least drown, all the firstborn Jewish babies, male babies. And it was at a time, in other words, when the negative forces were in charge, allowed to be in charge. Now, it explains that what's it coming to do? Why, when they're doing anavim, is the yud removed, which would be spelling Aleph Nun
Base Mem. It's coming to tell us
that Samael had shlita, rulership, over 3 months of the year. Hashem gave him that. Which were those months? Tebet, Tammuz, and Av. Now, Tebet, he doesn't explain this, but just to elaborate a bit, is a time when the beginning of the besiege of Yerushalayim in the First Temple era, which resulted on Tisha B'Av a little later that year in its ultimate destruction. The second time,
the other 2 months are Tammuz and Av.
Now, those 2 months have a very negative power. So the question is, it was a time of danger, time of testing. However, there's 2 opinions. One that said the spies, 10 spies, that were going to give an evil report on Eretz Israel and Eretz Israel, and basically against Hashem, not trusting in him, was given the plotting death in the beginning. The other opinion is they originally, as the judges of the thousands, were righteous people. If you look at the wording, it's almost implying that they were leaders of Israel, not just the judges of the thousands. In any event, what happened? Well, to understand that, the Rav Shimshon Asrapoli explains that they left on Kaf Tet Sivan. The evil influence only started at Rosh Chodesh Tammuz, so therefore they started out. Now, why did Moshe tell them to get, among other things, the cluster of the anavim, grapes, and one other fruit? Why did he do that? To show that it's not just to show how wonderful the produce was. It was supposed to teach something else. The size of it and the quality of it was the kedusha of the land, the holiness of the land. And this was hopefully going to be a positive influence on the spies, which he had concerns about, and of the people. And they saw it, and because it's showing the kedusha, holiness of Eretz Israel, Eretz Canaan, which is going to become Eretz Israel. And so the problems only began and started in Rosh Chodesh Tammuz. We start the period of 3 weeks on Yud Zayin Tammuz. In any event, they came back on Tisha B'Av, what's going to be a 9th of Av, which is a very sad time. First and second temples were destroyed. Now, what does Anavim, spelled without the Yud, have to do with Samael? And one explanation that's given is that if you look at the letters Ayin Nun Beis Mem, and it said Yemei Bukuri Anavim, if you look at what it's telling us, if you go one letter backwards, you get the letter I becomes a Samach, Nun becomes a Mem, base becomes an Aleph, and Mem, so P becomes Lamed. What does it spell? Samael. Now, who is Samael? Samael is the Yetzer Hara. He's the evil influence. Now, if he's the evil influence, and that, as I said, that Yud being Chasa was a sign of that. And therefore, that is connection. He also brings and how do we know? And also he says there's no big Simmons. It says you may. It could have just said the time of the first fruits. Why did it say in the days of? If you look at the sources brought for that, that the gematria of the letters Yemei in Hebrew, days. If you look at it, each in the Hebrew number has a numerical value, and Yud is 10, Mem is 10, and 40, and Yud, that's 60. That's equal to 2 months. And the Samech Mem put together that it was the days of Bikuri Anavim, the letter Mem indicates is a hint to the letters before it, which spells Samael. It was often abbreviated by some Samet Mem, because they don't want to pronounce it fully out. In any event, that is one of the answers. That is another part of the explanation. And a further explanation, they explain in he quotes Rabbi Natan Shapira. Natan Shapira was a rabbi in the 1500s. And he was an incredible individual. In fact, he was so holy that if anybody asked for Shalema, the recovery, as soon as he said, gave him a bracha for Shalema, whatever the medical ailment was, it immediately disappeared. Now, he in his book, he's author of the Makalei Mukot, revelation, literally means revelation of the deep. He also explained that what is the connection? It has to do with the Eitz Das, Tov and Ra, the tree that Adam and Chava ate from, that led to them being expelled from it. And there's a hint in it that it talks about later in the Devarim, Pasuk in Devarim 32:32. It talks about Anavi Rosh, and Rosh being sour or bitter. Rosh also says, look at the heads of the letters, look at, in other words, the letters before, and as I explained, what you get is Samael. And because Samael, in the guise of the snake, the Nachash, was the one who convinced Chava to eat from the fruit, and then she fed it to Adam, who didn't, and his sin was that he didn't ask what he was eating, and so he was equally involved. He was also involved in the sin. And that has been coming to us ever since. Now, another explanation. So taking all this is interesting, but what does it specifically have to do with the Meraglim? It has another connection, as explained by the Shlach Kodesh. He quotes the Shlach, Rav Shimshon Master. It's also indicating something very important. And what is it that it's indicating? It's indicating that the sin, the Meraglim, was supposed to be a tikkun, a correction of the sin of Adam and Chava by eating the Eitz Das, Tov and Ra. And why was it a cure? Because the Anavim is the hint again, the Samael, and Samael was the Eitz Hara. Where do we see Samael before? Between the Eitzadas Tov and Ra, and good and treating the tree of good and evil, and the Meraglim. You saw it also affected Yaakov. He was wrestling with Avinu was wrestling with an angel all night, and he asked the angel his name. He said, "Don't ask my name." The angel finally gave him, after injuring him in the sciatic nerve, gave him a bracha, blessing. But the very interesting question is, it's explained elsewhere that what did he say his name is? Two answers. One, my name is you don't know my name. And second of all, is my name is Samael. He's that angel, the Yetzer Hara Satan, the accuser. And so, as was the learning with the Kabrusa, studying with a Kabrusa study partner about this week's Parsha, and he asked an interesting question. He said it seemed like the odds were stacked, that it was almost inevitable that the Meraglim were going to sin and slander the land. So discussion that an answer that I raised was the following, that not necessarily, because first of all, there was some help given to the Meraglim. What was when the help given the Meraglim? For that, understand that, we have to go back to Yosef. And Yosef accused his brothers when he was viceroy of Egypt, prince of Egypt, accused them. What did he accuse them of? He accused them of being Meraglim. They kept denying it. Now, whether you want to call them Meraglim or not, they weren't really in the real true sense Meraglim, though they were looking out to find Yosef. They were spying out the land, but not in the sense he talked about. But Yosef had a prophetic, was speaking prophetically, even if he didn't realize it, was what was going to happen to the brothers in the generation of this Meraglim. Their neshamas, their souls, 10 brothers, became Iburim to despise. What does that mean? Often a spy, often a neshama, if it needs its help or it needs to help somebody, will join with another soul and another soul, main soul of a person's body. Now, these Iburim, the 10 brothers went to the 10 spies who sinned. There's a whole cheshbon calculation of who entered Yeshua and Caleb, which is a bit beyond our discussion today. In any event, they were there. Now, as the Pasukim indicate, when they come back, it mentions twice they came back, then it mentions they came back, and they saw Moshe and went to speak to Moshe and Aaron in the assembly. Now, why did the double language of coming back? To tell us that when that by the time they indicate that the ones who spoke to Moshe and Aaron and the Jewish people started slaying the land were evil. By that time, the brothers, when they got back, and before they could do that, the neshamas of the brothers left the spies at that point because they've been sent there to help them. And possibly if there was any accusation of tikkun to them. In any event, this is what happened. And what do we derive from all this? And we're coming into the period of 3 weeks and a few weeks, when in general, with the challenges we're facing today, both in Israel and around the world, it's to teach us that even though there was challenge, Hashem did help us, and also the events they worked things out in such a way that the spies wouldn't be noticed. The spies misinterpreted his actions totally. However, that even though there's high odds that we can succeed, Hashem does not give us individually, the spies of the nation, about listening to spies, a test that they can't pass. Some cases they don't always, but there's always the possibility. And when we face the challenges today, we should realize that even though it's difficult to maintain at a high level our emunah and betachan, we still can. And I'd like to wish everybody a good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.